Relax. I just put him in there for a few minutes. His ticking noise was ruining my livestream audio. My sister Stephanie waved her wine glass at the glass sunroom where my 14-year-old autistic son was locked inside. It was 95 degrees in that box. Noah was curled on the floor, rocking violently and gasping for air. But Stephanie just laughed. He's fine, she said. I didn't scream. I looked at my son, then at my sister, and decided that Stephanie's life ended today. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I want to see how far this story travels. I didn't waste time looking for a key. I grabbed a heavy stone garden ornament and smashed the lock mechanism off the sunroom door. The glass shattered, and a wave of heat hit me like a physical blow. It smelled like baking concrete and desperation. I scooped Noah up. He was dead weight, his skin burning hot and dry to the touch, and ran for my car. I didn't scream for help. I didn't ask Stephanie for water. I knew better. In a crisis, you don't negotiate with terrorists. You execute the protocol. I got him into the back seat and blasted the air conditioning. My hands didn't shake. I'm a 34-year-old logistics director. My entire career is built on managing disasters, and my life as a special needs mom is built on preparing for them. I grabbed the sensory emergency kit I keep under the seat. I cracked 2 instant ice packs and pressed them to the back of his neck and under his arms. I checked his smartwatch. Heart rate 140. Dangerous, but steady. My instinct screamed to call 911, but I did the math. We were at a remote estate in the hills. An ambulance would take 20 minutes. My car could get us to the emergency room in 15. I put the car in gear, ready to tear out of the driveway, when a fist banged on my driver's side window. It was Stephanie. She wasn't holding a bottle of water. She wasn't asking if Noah was breathing. She was holding a clipboard. "You can't leave!" she yelled through the glass, pulling on the locked handle. "The factory in Vietnam just emailed. They won't release the inventory without a customs broker's signature. You have to sign this release, or the launch is dead." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her nephew was in the back seat, recovering from heat exhaustion that she caused, and she was worried about inventory. I rolled the window down 2 inches. The blast of cold air hit her, and she flinched, shoving the clipboard through the gap. "Just sign it, Vanessa." "God, don't be so dramatic. He's sitting up, isn't he? Sign the release so I can get back to my guests." I looked down at the document. It was a standard international shipping contract for her new luxury product line. But then my eyes caught the Incoterms clause at the bottom. Ex-Works. I froze. Stephanie didn't know what that meant. But I did. Ex-Works meant the buyer Stephanie took full financial responsibility for the goods the second they left the factory floor. It meant she was liable for the shipping, the insurance, the customs, and most importantly, the storage fees if anything went wrong. If I signed this as her broker, I could move the cargo. But if I signed it and then quit, she would own $120,000 of product sitting on a dock she couldn't access, racking up fines she couldn't pay. "Hurry up," she snapped, tapping her manicured nail on the glass. "I have investors waiting." I looked at Noah in the rearview mirror. He was blinking, his breathing slowing down. He was going to be okay. But Stephanie? She wasn't. "Give me the pen," I said. My voice was calm. Terrifyingly calm. I signed the document. I authorized the shipment knowing exactly what I was going to do to it. I wasn't just signing a customs release, I was signing her bankruptcy papers. "There," I said, shoving the clipboard back at her. "Now get away from my car." Finally, she huffed, checking her hair in my side mirror. "See you at the after party. Try to look less miserable." She turned and strutted back toward the music. I rolled up the window, put the car in drive, and peeled out of the gravel driveway. I drove toward the hospital, checking Noah's vitals every 30 seconds. My hands were steady on the wheel. I wasn't crying. I was calculating. Stephanie thought she had just launched an empire. She didn't realize she had just signed a contract with the devil, and I was the one holding the pen. An hour later, the emergency was over, but the silence in my car was heavier than the heat had been. Noah was stabilized, asleep in the cool darkness of his room with the blackout curtains drawn. The doctors said he was lucky. I knew luck had nothing to do with it. He was alive because I was prepared for the disasters my family constantly created. I sat in my car in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I closed my eyes and saw the ledger. Most people see memories when they think about their family. I see invoices. For 6 years, I hadn't been a sister or a daughter. I had been a venture capitalist funding a failing startup called the Miller Family Image. It started small, a credit card payment here, a car repair there. But then came the private school, $45,000 a year so Stephanie's kids could go to the same elite academy as the governor's children. Then came the lifestyle stipend, $6,500 a month transferred automatically to her account, disguised as consulting fees from my company so her husband, Ryan, wouldn't feel emasculated. I paid for the country club membership I wasn't allowed to use. I paid for the leased SUVs. I paid for the very wine Stephanie was drinking while my son suffocated in her sunroom. I did the math in my head. $480,000. That was the price tag on my admission ticket to this family. And what did I get for it? I got mocked at parties. I got parents who told me to fix my face when I was upset. I got a son who was treated like a broken toy. For a long time, I asked myself why I did it. Why did a smart, successful logistics director let herself be bled dry for half a decade? Was I weak? Was I desperate? No, it was something more insidious. In economics, we call it the sunk cost fallacy. It's the trap where you keep pouring resources into a failing project not because you think it will succeed, but because you can't bear to walk away from what you've already invested. You think, I've already spent 3 years and 200 grand. If I leave now, it was all for nothing. But if I pay just a little more, maybe this quarter they'll finally love me. Maybe this check will be the one that buys their respect. I sat there in the dark, looking at the house I bought with my own money, and realized I had been investing in a scam. There was no return on investment coming. There was no dividend of love. The market had crashed, and my assets were worthless. Stephanie wasn't a distressed asset I could turn around. She was a liability. And in the logistics world, when a liability threatens the integrity of the entire supply chain, you don't bail it out. You cut it off. I opened my eyes. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done negotiating. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. I didn't tremble. I didn't hesitate. I looked at the scheduled transfer for the first of the month, the mortgage payment for my parents, Violet and Lincoln, who had watched my son suffer and said nothing. I hit cancel. Then I went to the tuition portal. Cancel. Then the stipend. Cancel. It was time to liquidate. I didn't go to sleep. I couldn't. I needed to see the enemy one last time before I pulled the trigger. I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark, the blue light of my phone illuminating my face. A notification popped up at the top of the screen. Stephanie Miller is live. I tapped it. The screen filled with the golden glow of the party I had just fled. The music was louder now. A thumping bass that would have sent Noah into a meltdown instantly. Stephanie was standing on a makeshift stage near the pool, a microphone in one hand and a magnum of champagne in the other. She looked radiant. She looked triumphant. She looked like a woman who hadn't just nearly killed her nephew. I just want to say, she shouted into the mic, her voice slightly slurred, that today is the beginning of the Miller Empire. We just signed the logistics deal of the century. My new product line is officially global. The crowd cheered. My parents, Violet and Lincoln, were standing in the front row, clapping harder than anyone. I watched my mother beam with pride, the same mother who had watched me drag my overheating son to the car and hadn't even offered to hold the door. Self-made, Stephanie screamed, raising the bottle. Nobody handed this to me. I built this brick by brick. I felt a cold laugh bubble up in my throat. Self-made. I had paid for the bricks. I had paid for the mortar. I had paid for the microphone she was holding, and the stage she was standing on. And 5 hours ago, I had signed the contract that she was bragging about, the contract that was actually a financial death sentence. Then, I saw a comment scroll up the side of the screen. A follower asked, "Where's the nephew?" I thought he was going to be the ring bearer for the launch. Stephanie saw it. She didn't flinch. She didn't look guilty. She rolled her eyes, leaning confidentially into the camera. "Oh, don't ask," she sighed, pulling a face of mock exhaustion. The help had to take him home. He was having one of his episodes. You know how it is. He was ruining the aesthetic, honestly. The ticking noise was drowning out the DJ. Better for everyone that he's gone. The help. She wasn't talking about a nanny. She was talking about me. Her sister. The woman who had funded her existence for 6 years. To Stephanie, I wasn't family. I was staff. And Noah wasn't a child who had suffered a medical emergency due to her negligence. He was a glitch in her production value. In the background of the shot, I saw my father, Lincoln, lean over and whisper something to my mother. They both laughed. They were relieved we were gone. We were the stain on the carpet that had finally been scrubbed out. That was the moment the last thread snapped. If I had harbored even one microscopic grain of guilt about what I was about to do, about the financial ruin I was about to unleash on my own sister, it evaporated instantly. There was no redemption here. There was no misunderstanding. These were people who would consume me until I was a husk and then complain that I wasn't filling enough. I didn't type a comment. I didn't send an angry text. I simply closed the app. The room went dark again. I stood up and walked to my home office. It was time to go to work. The war hadn't started at the barbecue. It started right now. I walked into my home office and sat in my ergonomic chair. The room was silent, a stark contrast to the thumping bass of the party that was still ringing in my ears. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating the spreadsheet I had closed earlier. But I wasn't looking at family expenses anymore. I was logging into the global logistics portal my firm used to manage international freight. Stephanie liked to play business. She liked the aesthetic of it, the launch parties, the branded stationery, the founder title in her bio. But she didn't understand the mechanics. She didn't understand that the global supply chain is a merciless machine that eats amateurs alive. And thanks to the document she had forced me to sign in the driveway, she had just walked into the gears. I pulled up the active shipment file. Project Glow. SKU. 8920. $120,000 worth of custom packaging and product. Currently sitting in a 40-foot container on the Hanjin Scarlet. Docking at the port of Long Beach in exactly 6 hours. Step 1. The resignation. I drafted a formal email to the manufacturing partner in Vietnam. I didn't use emotional language. I used corporate boilerplate. Effective immediately. I, Vanessa Miller, am resigning as the customs broker and freight forwarder for Stephanie Miller Brands. All future correspondence regarding clearance and drayage should be directed to the consignee. Click. Sent. She was now flying blind. Step 2. The blacklist. I navigated to the credit risk database. For years, I had been personally guaranteeing her invoices. When she was late, I paid. When she overextended, I covered the gap. To the system, she looked like a AAA client. To reality, she was insolvent. I removed my personal guarantee. Then, I uploaded the records of her unpaid invoices, the real ones, the ones I had been hiding. The system flagged her LLC immediately. High-risk credit account. Cash on delivery only. Step 3. The trap. This was the kill shot. I pulled up the bill of lading. Because I had signed the release under X-Works terms, the legal ownership of that cargo had transferred to Stephanie the moment it left the factory floor in Ho Chi Minh City. She didn't just own the product. She owned the problem. Since I had resigned, there was no broker to clear the goods through customs. The container would be offloaded at the port and placed in a holding yard. And that is when the clock would start. Demurrage. It's the ugliest word in logistics. It's the fee the port charges when you don't move your container fast enough. For a high-demand port like Long Beach, the rate was punitive. After the free window passed, Stephanie would be charged $800 a day. Every single day. She couldn't ship the goods because she had no broker and no credit. She couldn't return the goods because the contract was non-cancelable, non-returnable. The factory already had their money, which she borrowed. They didn't want the product back. And she couldn't even abandon the goods. In maritime law, you can't just walk away from a container. You are liable for the disposal fees, the storage fees, and the environmental levies. I leaned back in my chair. Stephanie thought she had built an empire. What she had actually built was a debt prison. She had a $120,000 anchor sitting on a dock in California, and starting tomorrow morning, it was going to cost her $800 a day just to look at it. I closed my laptop. I didn't feel happy. I felt efficient. The order was processed. The supply chain was broken. Now, I just had to wait for the invoice to arrive. 3 days of silence followed. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a dam about to burst. I spent those days working, taking care of Noah, and watching the tracking status of container SKU 8920. Every morning, the status updated. On hold. Port Authority. Every morning, another $800 was added to Stephanie's tab. Then, on Thursday afternoon, the door to my office banged open. My assistant didn't even have time to announce her. Stephanie stormed in, bypassing the reception desk. She looked manic. Her founder blowout was frizzy, her designer blazer was wrinkled, and there was a wild, desperate look in her eyes that I had never seen before. "Fix it," she snapped, slamming my desk. "Port fees are $2,400. They won't release the container. The factory won't answer. You did this." "I resigned," I said without looking up. "I'm not your broker. I can't touch the shipment." "You blacklisted me," she screamed. "My credit was flagged. I reported accurate data," I replied. "You're insolvent. That's not a blacklist." She froze, then smiled. Cold. Calculated. "I have backup funding." "You don't," I said. "Everyone's tapped." She tossed a letter onto my desk. "A $100,000 merchant cash advance. Predatory. Instant." "How?" I asked. "It's not my credit," she said calmly. "It's Noah's." The room went silent. Years ago, she'd added my son as an authorized user, quietly building a perfect credit profile. Now she'd taken a loan against it. "If you report this," she whispered, "the bank sees his name. Do you want your autistic son investigated for fraud?" She stood. "I win. She was wrong. I worked in compliance. I didn't need a lawyer. I filed a suspicious activity report, synthetic identity fraud involving a minor. Once filed, the system doesn't negotiate." The next morning at the port of Long Beach, I watched as her card was declined. Again. Then security stepped in. Minutes later, detectives arrived. I handed over the binder. Contracts, IP logs, medical affidavits, and 6 years of financial records. She was arrested for wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and bank fraud. Her container became evidence, $800 a day in fees she couldn't stop. 2 months later, I sat in my garden with my son. Quiet. Safe. Court update. Pre-trial motions denied. 5 to 10 years. I deleted the family ledger, the $480,000 I'd paid to keep the peace. For the first time, I wasn't the bank. I was free.